In the 1990s, a group of Kansas City Chiefs football players posed for a poster that, well, let's just say it's hard to imagine a team today thinking this was a good idea. But while the team has shied away from some of the more offensive associations with its name, the Chiefs are still among the teams that play the tomahawk chop during their games, and they allow fans to show up to home games dressed like this guy. Yeah, that guy. But it would seem that the Chiefs know they have a potential public relations nightmare looming. In June, amid mounting criticism over the Redskins name and logo, the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office canceled the team's trademark registration, deeming it and the logo disparaging to Native Americans. That decision is under appeal. Redskins owner Dan Snyder defended the team name, meanwhile, in a new interview on Monday on ESPN 980, a radio station he actually owns.
I think that it's time that people look at the truth and the history and real meanings and look at us for what we are. We're a historic football team that's very proud, that has a great legacy, that honors and respects people.
They respect people. They say so themselves. Now, the plaintiff in the trademark case against the Redskins was a Navajo and social worker named Amanda Blackhorse, who has also protested the Cleveland Indians, a team that has recently scaled back the use of that cartoonish, quote, Chief Wahoo, end quote, logo. There it is. Blackhorse has criticized the Kansas City Chiefs as well, and the Chiefs are now, according to the Kansas City Star, trying to, quote, avoid a cultural free-for-all by forming an alliance with American Indian groups. The Chiefs have reportedly reached out to several of them, and Chiefs President Mark Donovan has held meetings with at least 2 local American Indian leaders in the past week alone. But for the Chiefs, like the Redskins, Indians, Chicago Blackhawks, and other teams with these Native American names and logos, it is simply getting harder and harder to keep the critics at bay. Eleanor Holmes Norton is Washington's representative, and Jacqueline Keeler is a Navajo and co-founder of the group Eradicating Offensive Native Mascotry. Good evening to you both.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Congresswoman, the cliche term is a tipping point. Are we there on this issue yet?
We have tipped. You've got not only the second time, Native people have won in the Patent and Trademark Commission. They lost the first time on appeal only because of the technicality. You've got members of the House of Representatives, I'm one of 10, who have filed a bill to cancel the trademark. You've got 50 senators who call for canceling of the trademark. You've got religious leaders, civil rights leaders. This is a movement, and the law is on our side. The Native people are winning, and I don't know what Roger Goodell of the NFL and Dan Snyder are waiting for. Do they want to be kicked? They want to be dragged kicking and screaming across the line?
Jacqueline,
shame.
Yeah, Jacqueline, let me ask you on that point. You know, I was reading up on this today, and one of the sort of bizarre counter arguments you hear from the defenders as well, we should really be focused on the plight of Native American Indian communities, reservations, economic issues. I'm not aware of the rule that says you have to only do one of these 2 things, but what do you say to that argument?
Well, I think that Native people are able to do many things simultaneously, and certainly we work on those issues as well. I've spent 20 years working in the Native communities on these issues. And I think that the reason this is really important is because it affects all the other issues. When we are stereotyped, we are marginalized, and our issues become obscured by mascots. Everyone knows the mascots, they know the stereotypes, but they don't know anything about us. And so when it comes time to make decisions, like policy decisions, funding decisions, these are harmed by this lack of knowledge. And you see that in Supreme Court justice rulings, you know, and where children are taken away from the tribes. You see that in funding, where the Indian Health Service, their funding is reduced, because there are a lot of misconceptions about Native people. And this is why, you know, mascots have to go. Basically, they promote stereotypes, outdated stereotypes about Native people, and they pigeonhole us so that real Native people aren't seen for who we are, and nobody knows anything about us.
Congresswoman, do you think that teams would get away with this with roughly comparable terminology or imagery about larger or potentially more politically powerful groups?
Ezra, this is a very important point. They wouldn't dare do this to African Americans or Hispanics, but look at the difference between us. Native people are 2 or 3% of the population. African Americans are about 10%, and Hispanics are an even larger number. The larger the number, the more difficult it is to use the stereotypes. Stereotypes in a diverse society are intolerable and harmful to children and to the people themselves, as you have just heard. And they are not tolerated, except when the group is so small and so spread out that it's harder for them to fight back. Well, I tell you one thing, Native people have raised the consciousness of people far from Native people, and now what we have is a movement in every part of the country.
Jacqueline, do you agree with that?
Yeah, she's absolutely right. You know, most Native people live off the reservation, like 60 to 70%. And so Native youth are subjected to these mascots and these images in their schools, on TV, by their friends, you know, alone. You know, they're a minority amongst minorities in urban and suburban communities and rural communities. And then, and so it is, studies show that this really affects Native youth self-esteem. It lowers it. Studies show that even Native youth who say they're okay with mascots, their self-esteem is measurably lower after seeing a mascot. And it's a real form of a taking from one of the most vulnerable populations in the United States. Native youth have 3 times the rate of suicide of any other group of youth in the country, and those are from the CDC figures.
And Congresswoman, what do you say to the argument on politics, not on substance, mind you, but on the politics, that more needs to be done to win this effort, because you still see polls showing a majority, one poll showing 71% of people saying this doesn't need to change?
Yeah, isn't it interesting that what we've had in the last few years is a consciousness-raising effort led by Native people. I am a third-generation Washingtonian. I've lived with the Washington team all my life, and I'm a civil rights activist, civil rights lawyer. They had to raise my consciousness. So of course they're going to have to raise the consciousness of the American people. People did not know. Shame on us, but we didn't know. We did know. And now we know. Once you know, there's no excuse.
Well, what you just said is not easy to say, I think, especially for a politician. Maybe you're not a normal politician. Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, thank you. And Jacqueline Keeler, thank you for joining us and for your work.
Thank you.
Of course.
And now we're going to turn next to an update on the situation developing in Iraq. Stay with us.